Hello, so we are in part 2 of Community, the Community Podcast. If you have not listened to the part 1 of the Community Podcast, I will link it up in the top right hand corner for you. If you hear that sizzling in the back, that is my food cooking because I am hungry, so I will be eating after this podcast. Hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. But I wanted to pick up this podcast where I left off in the last one, which was telling you the story about Yvette Nicole Brown. I promised you some tea, so I want to deliver on the tea. Just a quick recap, in case you didn't hear part 1 and you're listening to part 2. Yvette Nicole Brown, who played Shirley on Community, who genuinely was one of my favorite characters on the show, but outside of the show, just her being a person, we kind of had a little bit of a run-in. So years ago, when I was on Twitter, I had quite a huge following on Twitter, and I had more than a couple of celebrities follow me on my Twitter account. One of those celebrities was Norman Reedus, who was the star of is the star of The Walking Dead, his manager, and I also had one of his best friends who's also an actor follow me as well. So in the process of that, I ended up getting a lot of followers from the Walking Dead community. Plus, I was very active in that community on Twitter, in the sense that we used to live tweet the episode every week. It was a big thing on Twitter at the time. This was years ago. And Yvette Nicole Brown was a super huge Walking Dead fan, as everybody was at the time, and she used to live tweet often on Twitter with the fans. She would interact with the fans and live tweet with the fans, and it was kind of a weekly thing. She even hosted panels for The Walking Dead. She was on Talking Dead a couple of times. She was a huge fan of the show. So one Sunday, while we were live tweeting The Walking Dead, in the process of her comments, and I'll just tell you how this snowballed so quickly, it's so crazy. In her comments, I think it was her comments, I can't remember, because it was like live tweeting going on. I can't remember whose comments was whose, and sometimes you're not even in that person's comments, but you'll see somebody's quote and somebody else's tweet or somebody else's comments that they replied to and stuff like that. So I can't remember if I don't think I was on her Twitter page, but I think it was, I don't know how it happened, but I don't think it was her Twitter, but someone had made the comment in the process of her tweeting about, or maybe it was a tweet that she made about Walking Dead. It got a lot of, obviously likes and replies. And in the comment section, a fan of Community called her Shirley and went on to say how much he enjoyed her character on Community. He was a huge fan of her character on Community, or something along those lines. You have to remember, this is years and years and years and years and years ago, mid 2000s, right when the show was like at the height of its popularity. It had to be like season 5, season 6. I think I started watching it around like season 6, season 7, so it had to be before then. But anyway, so she replied to that fan, who was literally just complimenting her on her character. He made the mistake and called her character's name, which a lot of actors run into, and they all talk about how it's irritating for them to be called characters' names, but like not everybody walks around knowing actor and actresses' names, So he just called her character's name. She snapped back at this fan very rudely, and if it wasn't rude, it came off incredibly rude, because it's, again, social media, and you have to watch how you write things because it can come off rude. But it really did come off rude how she replied to him. It was basically, my name isn't Shirley, that's the character's name, blah, blah, blah. But it came off incredibly rude. And so I just replied. Now, mind you, there are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of replies on this, actresses, tweet. It was mostly about Walking Dead stuff. So I literally saw her reply to this fan, basically, and I literally in the most benign way to say, well, god darn, he was just saying how much he was a fan of yours, like that. Like, that was my reply, or something along the lines of that. Because the response to her calling, or to the fan calling her character's name, seemed so snappy and rude. And then she replied to me. And when I say, I can't remember, I got rid of my Twitter a long time ago, and I wish I still had it so I could pull up the interaction. But she replied to me, and her reply to me was really shitty. And mind you, I didn't say anything rude. It was just like, well, it was like, well, dang, he was just saying how much of a fan he was of the show. Like, maybe he could have asked your name first, but I don't think that, this was after we were going back and forth. And it got really snotty between the two of us. And eventually I had to get rude, which I didn't jump in there rude. I didn't. I think she was just in a shitty mood. Probably shouldn't have been on social media that day. Anyway it goes, that interaction happened, right? Didn't think too much of it. I'm over it. It's done. Whatever. The next week we come back and we're all live tweeting again with The Walking Dead and The Walking, Dead fandom. And I'm just tweeting, how I normally do, and replying to other people's tweets about The Walking Dead and having a good time. And then I see I'm being mentioned. I get mentioned by Yvette Nicole Brown in a tweet, but I can't see her tweet because apparently she blocked me. But she was mentioning me from last week's interaction. And the only way I know about it is because somebody replied to her tweet, and I saw the reply to her tweet, but couldn't find her tweet because she had blocked me. And then I replied to the person who replied to her tweet, even though I couldn't see her tweet. And in the process of me replying to the person who replied to her tweet about me, she replied to me. And so we went at it again. And so it just became this thing. And I was like, wow, that really freaking snowballed for like no reason. That was the end of the interaction between me and Yvette Nicole Brown. But come to find out, not too long after that, San Diego Comic-Con happens. She's on a panel. I don't know if it was a community panel. I think maybe it was a community panel or some panel. And she starts talking about toxic fans on social media. And this is like right after this interaction between me and her happened. And she starts talking about toxic fans and how it's best to just ignore and not reply. And I was like, I'm literally watching this panel and I'm like, bitch, that's you. You were the toxic one. What are you talking about? I should have blocked you. The fans should have blocked you. You're the fucking toxic one. And so it was really funny, but that was just kind of my little history with Yvette Nicole Brown. Again, this was like years on top of years ago, but it was funny that she, I don't know, had it out for me for some reason. And then she even mentioned our interaction at Comic-Con like I was the toxic one. So anyway it goes, I still love the show. I could care less about actors and actors. I don't really idolize actors and actresses, so I don't really care. The show is still great regardless of what interaction happened between me and Yvette Nicole Brown. Okay, so that's that story. I want to move on now to some of my favorite episodes on Community. And when I was putting this list together, it really surprised me how many episodes are actually my favorite episodes. I thought maybe I can pick out like five episodes, but it ended up being more than that because I was like, no, I really love this episode. So I'm just going to discuss some of my favorite episodes from Community, and then if you have your favorite episodes, you can post it down as well. Okay, so some of my favorite episodes are basically any episodes. I'm being very honest about this. Any episode that focus on Dean and Chang. Dean and Chang focused episodes were 100% my favorite. I love the Dean and Chang. They're two of my favorite sitcom characters of all time. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm saying that truthfully. And so any episodes that focus on them were definitely my favorite. Now, to be more specific, Environmental Science was an episode that I absolutely loved. And then you also have the episode Physical Education, where Jeff faces off with the PE teacher. Remember that episode where he faces off with the PE teacher in the pool competition, and by the end of it, they're like both naked playing pool. I love Beginner Pottery because it was the first introduction of one of my other favorite side characters, Rich. Contemporary American Poetry was so much fun. I love it. It was the episode where It was kind of like a poultry criminal gang episode where Abed was like the crime boss of poultry, and it was brilliantly done. Anytime they do any sort of parodies or spoofs of a genre, they do it amazingly well. I also like Epidemiology, the zombie episode. I think it's called Epidemiology. It was a zombie episode, was one of my favorites. Remedial Chaos Theory, the 6 Timeline episode was one of my favorites. Then you have Horror Fiction in the 7 Spooky Steps, the Halloween Story episode where they were trying to figure out who's the sociopath, was one of my faves. And then documentary filmmaking, Redo was one of my all-time favorite eps. Basic Rocket Science, where the group gets involved with the school aerospace training program and they get stuck in that like simulation rocket. Digital Estate Planning, which was them playing as the video game versions of themselves, again, them doing another genre, and it was brilliantly done. First Chang Dynasty, because Chang. Paranormal Parentage, the other Halloween episode where Pierce pranks the group at his mansion. Basic Glutenal Numismatics. I don't know how to say that. The only thing I need to say about this episode is the Ass Crack Bandit, basically. The Ass Crack Bandit, regardless of what the name of the episode is weird. The Ass Crack Bandit. App Development with Shirley and Jeff. They come to head, like their rivalry comes to head with the Meow Meow Beans. Meow Meow Beans was like, just the name of the freaking app was like, are you serious? And then you have G.I. Jeff. Again, another parody episode of G.I. Joe, which was done brilliantly. Ladder Chaos was the introduction to Frankie. I think that was the name of it. It was Ladder something. There was a name. It was the introduction. It was the very first episode that we get to see Frankie. And the intro to Recycled Cinema. The Chang sci-fi movie, again, was brilliant. Again, another parody of sci-fi, and that was great. My absolute favorite episode was the Basic RV Repair and Palmistry ep, and that was the episode where Dean Pelton buys the big hand, and it had one of my favorite lines of any TV show ever. But the scene where they're at night, where they're all sitting in the RV and they're apologizing for the things that they did wrong, and they're waiting on Dean Pelton to apologize, and instead of apologizing, he doesn't. He goes, "It's my giant hand, and I love it." And the way he delivered that freaking line was freaking epic to me. Do you know how many times that line plays over and over in my head for absolutely no reason? It's my giant hand, and I love it. It's just free. I love it. It was just a great episode. I have some honorable mentions here. As far as episodes, any episode that had paintball in it became a running theme throughout the series, and so any paintball episode for me was really amazing. Foosball and Nocturnal Vigilantism. It wasn't my favorite ep, but it had one of my favorite plot lines introduced on it, which was the semi-rivalry between Shirley and Jeff. The whole Big Shirley aspect when they were playing, like as kids, when they were playing the foosball, and she hits them with the foosball thing, was one of my favorite scenes ever. Big Shirley, Big Shirley, come on, man. It was hilarious. The regional holiday musical episode. Never thought I would enjoy a freaking musical. I never thought I would enjoy, I don't know if I really talked about how great the music and Community was. I think I mentioned the music, but I didn't really get into depth about how great the music was. Like, all of the music on Community 100% just could have been a freaking album. It could have been an album. And I actually don't know. I mean, I know shows have soundtracks, and I was trying to find soundtrack to Community. I found a couple songs on like YouTube, and I know they have like something on Apple Music, but it doesn't really have all of it. They need like a compilation album of all the songs on Community. Even that one song that they hymn. Does anybody know the name of that song? It's that constant reoccurring hymn. that I don't know if I'm getting the hymn completely right, but that hymn that they hymn, or hum all the time throughout the entire series. Like, what is that? I even love that. Like, I will listen to that over and over again. I never thought I would like a show. I think the only other show in my life that I enjoyed watching that was musical related was Glee. I actually like Glee. I didn't think I would like it, but I did. And this was like the only other show. I don't really like musicals. I can watch musicals if the music is good and it's not one of those musicals where they sing everything. It has to be one of those musicals where they talk normal and then they break out into song and it's really good music. Then like Grease in Chicago and stuff. Like, I can do that, or Moulin Rouge or something. But the Glee and Community did the music perfectly. I mean, I talk about the Balloon song earlier, and it's literally obsessed with that song. It's just, I listened to it way too freaking much for the show to have been over a million years ago. But the music is just great. Okay, the music is great. Pillows and Blanket was an epic freaking two episode arc that was, again, done brilliantly. Anytime they do any sort of parody episodes, it is amazing. And talking about parody episodes, you have Basic Lupine Urology, which was the brilliant parody episode of Law and Order, but done community style, right? So those are honorable mentions that I absolutely loved. And so many episodes that I love. I thought, I was like, I don't break it down to 5 episodes, but it's too many. And that's why I love Community. Now, I will spend the last couple minutes talking about the finale and the movie that is supposed to come out with Community. I would say season 6 clearly wasn't the best season, obviously, because it got that reboot. Season 5, right, was like the reboot. So it was like they had that reboot in season 5, and I thought really that was like the end of it. I was like, oh, this is going to be the crappiest season ever. And season 5 actually was really, really good. It was like right in line with the rest of introducing new characters and everything like that, but it was right in line with the rest of, like, the quality of season 5 was right in line with the rest of the show. It really went down in season 6, so they really should have ended it at season 5. Season 6, they had a couple of decent episodes in like the first half of season 6, like the one episode they had where I can't remember the name of the episode, but it was like the janitorial staff who was like responsible for like the underground paintball episode where Frankie was trying to get rid of paintball. That was in season 6, and the RV episode was in season 6. So I had some like good episodes on the front end of season 6, and then towards the back end of season 6, it got really like pointless and lost the plot, and that's, and it's like the last 2 episodes I really did not like. I did not like the episode where that is my cat playing with plastic bag, and I will not stop him from his joy, because doing a podcast gives me joy and playing with plastic bags gives him joy. So who am I to stop that joy? So the episode where, what's the guy's name? I forget the wedding between his name is on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember that, but the weird looking guy, or whatever the way Britta describes him. But it was the second to last episode, and it was his wedding that the whole group went to, and they kind of flubbed the wedding or whatever. It was an enjoyable enough episode, but you can tell it was getting towards the end of its lifespan. And then the very last episode, it was okay, but I didn't really like it. I didn't really like the whole repiloting and them trying to figure out like where they want to go after season 6. It was kind of boring. It was, I get it. You sent Abed and Annie off to kind of do their thing and like grow up and be done with college. They were already, done with college at that point. I just didn't really like it. I don't know. It just seemed boring and dead and a little bit pointless. And then also the way that they acted. So one of the things that I really did not like about the episode was the whole farewell between Annie and Jeff. As you probably know, just listen to my podcast, the part 1 of this. I didn't like the Annie Jeff relationship like at all. I don't think anybody really was a fan of the Annie Jeff relationship, and that's why they kind of never really went through it. I feel like if fans, two relationships on Community I feel like they played with and kind of stepped their toes in the water over the course of like 5 seasons, and fans never really picked up on it, and so they never really ran with it. And the very first one would be the whole Abed and Troy situation. It was a couple times in that season, and you have your opinions if you want to write it, if it's different, then that's cool. But there were a couple times where they kind of hinted toward it being some sort of a homosexual, eroticism or relationship, or Troy being into Abed in more than just a friendship sort of way, and Abed sort of being, having Asperger's, not really picking up the hints that Troy was dropping or ignoring the hints that Troy was dropping. And they were very subtle and a little bit out of place and weird. And I don't think the fans really picked up on it, never really took off. And so they never really went full throttle with it. But there were a couple of hints that they're, like testing the waters to see what audience would think. And then the same thing with Annie and Jeff throughout the entire, second season on. And I don't think fans ever really, and it was like, I see why. It would have been pointless. It would have been a huge distraction for the show. It would have ended up being the Jeff and Annie sort of relationship, because it was more serious and it was more feelings based, as opposed to Jeff and Britta, which was more silly and fantastical and in line with the show. And so it just would have been a soap opera of Jeff and Annie, and nobody needed that. So wasn't a fan of Jeff and Annie's relationship, and so for them to end it with it being so much focus on him admitting his feelings of being in love with her and visualizing them being married and making this huge deal about kissing her, and then come to find out, you realize, like, I literally saw that and I'm thinking, oh, they're going off, Annie's just going away for the summer. She has a summer freaking internship. She'll be back, and they're acting like they'll never see each other again, and she's just going, like, Abed went off to live and move somewhere else, I don't know where, but Annie was just doing a summer internship with the FBI and coming back. I'm like, why did you make such a big deal out of this? So it wasn't my favorite episode. It needed to end like halfway through season 6. They probably could have had like a shorter season, because those last 2 episodes I really could have done without. But with that being said, it was a great run for a great TV show. And then I've been hearing rumors for quite some time that they're going to do a movie, but this is like when did Community end? Didn't Community end like 2013? Between like 2013 and 2015. So it's going like almost 8 years now. We've been waiting on a Community movie, but there has been an update with the whole Community movie, and I'll give you updates on it in my news flashes. If you watch my podcast, my weekly podcast, again, I put my podcast out 2 podcasts a week, right? That's standard. I do the news flash podcast, which will be uploaded whenever there's something in, the realm of, nerddom that I need to update people with. Like my first couple of news flashes were about the Flash movie, and that was because numbers were coming in about the box office take of the Flash, and those were like immediate, and I wanted to do a podcast about it, so I will upload that and put that up. But so those are like news flashes whenever I have like updates and stuff. But for the most part, my podcast, the actual podcast that I record, are scheduled Sundays and Wednesdays, that you can listen to on Spotify whenever you want for 99 cents, or you can wait till the premiere date to listen to it here for free on YouTube. So when I start getting more information about the Community movie, I'll, start updating people either on my community tab or with the actual podcast that I upload when I get the information. But according to Joe McHale, the Community movie is going through, like, it's still going to happen. I don't know much more than that, other than it's been about 8 years now, and they're still saying we're going to get a Community movie. So I'm excited to see what they do with that, as long as they don't flash forward 10 years and Annie and Jeff are married with kids. Then I'm excited to see it. So anyways, that is my Community part 2 video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you have not seen part 1, I will link it up in actually in the description, and I'll put it up in the little top right hand corner, so you can click on that and watch that as well. Don't forget to like, share, positive feedback, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.